Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank all the witnesses for being here. I appreciate your service so very much. All of us do to the country and what you've done. And especially to the mayor, I'd like to just, you know, I didn't know you at 9/11. I was still a Michigan Secretary of State that day. We were having an election in Detroit, as you were in New York. But I remember, as we all do, where we were that day, what happened that day, what happened afterwards. And I think that's where you picked up what I think is your greatest title, and that's America's Mayor, because you were more than the President, more than the Governor, more than the FBI Director, more than the CIA, more than the Department of Defense. Everyone seemed to look to you, to what had happened, why it had happened, what was the path forward, what could America think about from that day forward. And I guess my question, Mr. Mayor, wants to go to a bit, how does the American people perceive this war on terror? And then how do we actually prosecute these enemy combatants, these terrorists as well? Because obviously we do face such a new type of enemy. It's not like, you know, the battlefields that are clearly drawn. Everyone has, on each side has their colored uniforms on. You're able to very quickly identify who the enemy is. And you spoke about identifying the enemy and how important that is for us. But now you've got a new type of enemy that sees the battlefield asymmetrically, really. I mean, the battlefield, whether it was the finish line at the Boston Marathon, they saw that as the battlefield. And I want to, I guess, talk about one very personal, obviously the Christmas Day bomber in 2009 over the skies of Detroit. That terrorist, enemy combatant, in my mind, saw the battlefield that particular day as seat 19A in, at that time, that Northwest flight. And, you know, what happened then, and we learned some lessons from that, as we always do. I mean, the plane actually taxied up to the gateway rather than should have been held out on the tarmac, really. But we learned from that. Then they arrest him, take him off to the University of Michigan Burn Center, where he received the very best treatment known to mankind. Immediately lawyered up, very quickly, lawyered up, Mirandized, lawyered up. And so I'm certain we lost all kinds of valuable information at that time with that particular terrorist. And then he was, of course, tried in Detroit at huge expense to the taxpayers for the enormous amount of security that was necessary there, et cetera. And I guess my question is, and I said actually that day, this guy is an enemy combatant, should not be Mirandized, should not be treated. This is not a law enforcement situation going on. I guess my question really is, how do you think we should be treating these individuals? Now, he is serving a life term. That's fine. But what about all the information that we lost by not turning him over to a military tribunal or what have you? And I guess I'm just questioning, as we look at these individuals and how this administration, this Department of Justice is proceeding, whether that's the right path forward in an effort to really put into the American psyche, we are in a war with these individuals. This is not some law enforcement thing.
I think it's a very, very good point, that the reality is that we keep referring to these individuals as isolated acts, single individuals. That's true. They're isolated and single individuals, but they're also connected. It's not as if these are completely independent of each other. They're connected by exactly the same motivation, exactly the same causative factors. They're driven by the same ideology. And if you recognize that, it makes it easier to catch them. I mean, it makes it easier to find the clues and the things that would lead to who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. I also, I certainly, in both cases, the Detroit case and the Boston case, if it were my decision, I would have treated both of them as enemy combatants for the purpose of questioning them endlessly. The fact is, particularly with Boston, you had more than enough evidence to convict the younger Tsarnaev brother. If you needed more evidence than that, I never would have hired you as an assistant U.S. attorney. If you needed more evidence than they already had by the time they caught him, well, then you shouldn't prosecute a case. So there was no reason, we didn't need his statement as a properly admitted confession or admission. What we needed was an endless amount of information from him. So it would have been, I think, a much wiser thing to declare him an enemy combatant, at least for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, and question him. When he got better, question him for as long as you have to question him to get every bit of information out of him. Same thing is true in Detroit. We also should recognize about the Detroit situation that it seems to me we only prevented that by luck. I mean, nobody should be taking credit for, gee, what a great job we did in preventing that bombing. He just was incompetent, and we can't count on that. I always have found in my life that I learn a lot more from when I lose and fail than when I succeed. And therefore, I think you shouldn't feel any kind of guilt about going back and examining these situations where we fail with excruciating analysis, because that's the only way we're going to prevent these things in the future. And our goal is a very difficult one here. To protect lives, we have to be right 100% of the time. So maybe we can't reach that standard, but the more analysis you do of these incidents after they happen, the more we're going to learn so that we fix it in the future. And why we'd ever want to deprive ourselves of information, I can't figure out. I mean, there was no tactical reason to give either one of these people Miranda warnings. In either case, you'd be able to prosecute and convict because you had enough evidence to do it. You certainly have more than enough basis to describe them as part of an international conspiracy against us, one they voluntarily joined on their own when they decided to undertake these acts. Many of them announced to us their motivation when they commit their crimes, like Major Hassan did. We're not talking about the bombing in London that took place, just short time after Boston. But that bomber went on television to tell us, in case we didn't get it right, that he was doing this in the name of Allah. So we get an idea that he joined this same conspiracy. So you certainly have enough basis to describe them as enemy combatants. When you have enough evidence to convict, it seems to me you should subject them to long periods of questioning so you can be sure that you get everything out of them that's useful to us in the future. And then you can move on and prosecute them in a military court, or you can send them back to a civilian court and prosecute them there after you've gotten out of them everything you can get out of them.
Thank you very much. My time has expired. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.